And it's day 2. Yeah. We're about 25% of the way in, okay? Think of it like going deep underground, all right? We're about 25% to the depth that we're going to go, okay? You can probably still see the lights of the surface, and we're just going to keep on going. Oh, man. Oh, great stuff. And if we can find a bottle, that'd be great, too. All right, so, you know, it's a real pleasure for me to finally get this stuff out there because, you know, we've been teaching this stuff on the smaller scale now for about, I've been teaching on a smaller scale for a couple years, and then, you know, we've been doing these seminars about a year. So you're starting to see a shift within the community with the types of skills that we're teaching. You know, you're seeing guys, you know, really, really becoming natural. Like I said yesterday, you know, my goal in all this is so that you guys not only have the ability to do really strong walk-ups, like, you know, see that woman that you want, know how to walk up, know how to get a lot of attraction going, know how to move things forward, take it all the way to the end. Not only that, but I want to see you guys at the highest level of general social skill as humanly possible. I want to see you guys, I guess the best way I could put it is like this. Do you guys remember when you were a kid and some kids were popular and some kids were not popular? And it was almost like there was this glass wall that maybe separated you from them. Or maybe some of you guys in here were the most popular kids, in which case I'm massively envious. No, just kidding. But really, there was like these sort of little things that put a sort of glass wall maybe between you and them. Or if you were one of them, then maybe that put it between you and the kids that wanted to be friends with you. Point being is that I guess you could say that once you have this stuff figured out, like I think especially by the time that we've gone through this weekend, you guys will have a very, very clear idea of what that glass wall was. And you'll also see that it was mostly of your own making, all right? Mostly it was just your own, you were just giving your power away in a level that nobody even wanted you to, and you're just going to stop doing it, and things are going to start to turn around for you. Sucks to be that guy. All right, does anyone want to do a cell phone check? Okay, I'll give you guys 2 seconds to check your cell phones. That was taught very thoroughly. Anyone that watches the program Foundations or takes a boot camp can learn the walk-up skills, can learn how to spark attraction, extract, and that kind of thing. This is a program that, you know, I guess you could say, back when I had the cold approach skills, I can remember times like, for example, when I first came out to Los Angeles, and I would go to a party up in the Hollywood Hills or something like that, and I would be sitting there trying to have a good time, but I'd be like, oh, am I supposed to be doing my cold approaches right now? You know, can I fit in with these people? And in a lot of ways, I felt like I did not fit in with those people, you know, like it was like everyone was having more fun than I was, that kind of a thing. And what I want to see for you guys is not only a level where, you know how to do walk-ups and that kind of a thing, but I want to see you guys being able to fit in with social groups really well, you know, be the man, that kind of thing, all of that stuff, okay? Total natural. And essentially what I want to see for you guys is that this is handled, all right? Like when I say handled, I mean like really, like it's like you've got it handled. You don't need to think about it anymore, you know? I mean, some guys take that too far and they just stop going out and they stop socializing. They're like, oh, that's handled. I'm just going to sit inside and play Warcraft. But the point is, you know, I would like it for you guys, as long as you're, you know, going out and being social, that you guys have got this handled. And that's really a goal of this program. So look, let's move into the next concept. Identity. What is identity? All right, first of all, before we even start covering this topic, I want to say that the topic of identity is covered differently by different people. So some people will talk about identity like, you know, what do you tell a girl you are? Like, are you a rock star? Or are you a astronaut or something like that? All right? So that's how some people look at identity. And actually, any term that's in here and any term that we talk about this weekend are just the ways that I'm coming at it. It doesn't make them right. So for example, I talk about concepts like masculine polarity or the ego or self-esteem or any, you know, identity or concepts like that. And if you ever get, you know, if you're ever having cocktails with someone and start getting into a debate about what these terms mean, bear in mind that there's no official definition. These are just the working definitions that I'm using to talk to you guys about. Even beyond that, something that Eckhart Tolle says, who's definitely a favorite author of mine, is that anything that's ever said is really just a signpost leading towards a certain state of being. So even though we have all these concepts and we're throwing out all this jargon at you and principles, ultimately, knowledge of these principles is not what's most important. It's the place that these principles will bring you to ultimately, all right? They're signposts to get you to a certain way of being. Don't get caught up in the principles. The principles are just the signposts. I like to get all nerd with it. I like to break it down in detail. But nonetheless, it's just signposts in a certain direction. So identity. What do I think about as being identity? Well, first of all, I would ask you this question. What would the world be like if no other people existed? Okay, think about that. All right, the world without other people. Has anyone in here, really favorite movie of mine, or a favorite TV series of mine, has anyone ever seen the Japanese anime series Neon Genesis? Couple nerds in the house? All right, that's a favorite of mine. Neon Genesis, is it called Evangelion? Yeah? Okay, and they've got the 2 alternate endings, right? My favorite was the original ending, and then they redid the ending as well, and that was cool too, but I like the original ending. Anyway, look, one of the sort of ideas that they talk about in that anime series, like this 24-episode thing, is the idea of unity versus separateness, and how essentially by having other people in the world, that can lead to things like judgment, self-hatred, comparing yourself to other people. So if you think about it, if nobody else existed, in some ways you could say that that would be a good thing. Because ultimately, you would never have to feel bad about yourself. You'd never have to feel low self-esteem in comparison to other people. You would never have to make a negative comparison, right? Wouldn't that be wonderful? All right, never have to feel bad ever again. Oh, it's so great, man. All right. On the other hand, though, your life would lose a tremendous amount of meaning. You would lose a lot of the context, for like the way that you make meaning out of your life. You would lose social relationships. You would lose so much. So it is sort of like a pros and cons sort of thing, which I would say mostly if no other people existed, that would be totally fucked. All right? Now, if we think about that deeper then, all right, what is identity? All right, what is your identity? And the way that I look at it is identity is a concept that relates you to and also separates you from your social environment. Okay, it relates you to and separates you from your social environment. It's your concept of who you are. It's your concept that says, here's how I'm different from people. Here's where I stand in relation to people. Here's what makes me who I am. Here's what makes me, I guess you could say, here's what gives me a certain status relative to other people. And as a result, I can act in all of these different ways. Right? Like, oh, I'm this cool guy, so I can act like this. I can act however I want. Oh, I'm not the coolest guy, so I cannot act however I want. That's sort of how I think about identity. All right? If you think about it, identity has sort of a thing like this. You might view yourself like on a scale. We could imagine this. Do you guys have totem poles in America? Yeah. Okay. Do you guys know what a totem pole is? All right, that's like an Indian carving of a tree with like different heads in it. You might imagine yourself being at the top of the totem pole, in the middle of the totem pole, at the bottom of the totem pole. All right? Just depending on where your self-concept is at. Because ultimately, by recognizing the differences between yourself and other people, you do form that concept of who you are and where you stand. All right? So look, we are always processing the world through that little seed in our mind that is our identity. That is such an important concept to understand. We are always processing the world through that little seed in our mind that is identity. What we perceive, the way that we perceive it, what we think about other people, the way that our emotions respond to other people. For example, if you think that you're down here and some guy comes in up here, your experience of that person is going to be dramatically different than somebody else who is up there. But see, ultimately, from a social perspective, you have the ability to do whatever you want to do, really, if you think about it. Like, you have the ability to walk into any nightclub, restaurant, shopping mall, see the girl that you want, be the man, yank her out of there. You have that ability. There is nothing that is actually stopping you, all right? Something that I'm going to talk about today is the idea that every single one of us here has a concept of what a cool guy looks like, what a popular guy looks like, what a guy who's successful with women looks like. We all have that concept. But at the same time, we do not give ourselves permission to be that guy. All right? The only thing that is really stopping you from being that guy is your sense of identity. All right, who you think you are. If you think that you're this guy, then there's a lot greater chance that you're going to go out and do the things that you're supposed to be doing. So look, ultimately, from a social perspective, the potential that you have is virtually infinite. All right, like from a social standpoint, the level of success that you could have socially, there's almost no limit to it. But it's your belief about who you are that's going to make you go forward, or it's going to pull you back. That's really what it comes down to. Now look, think about your identity as being something that can help you very, very deeply. Like, have you ever heard someone in a tough position say, look, I know who I am? Anyone ever heard that? Like maybe even someone who went to jail for the wrong reason, and he said, you know what, I know who I am, and that's all that mattered. Okay? That's like, you know, you hear that kind of thing sometimes. Likewise, your identity can also hold you back, and your identity can hold you back tremendously. All right? Does anyone here ever try to talk to their friends about this type of material? Yeah? Yeah. Try to bring it up with your friends, try to say, oh, hey, you know, there's this cool new stuff that I'm studying. You guys should come, you guys should check it out. Okay? What kind of responses do you get? Laughter? Has anyone here ever had a friend that they tell this stuff about, like they talk about this stuff to, and their friend's just like, oh, cool, great. Yeah? Like 2, 3 people in the room? Okay? Oh, a couple. All right. Now, is that the majority or is that the minority of your friends?
1 out of 20.
Yeah, 1 out of 20, 1 out of 30? All right. Okay, good. So my example held. Okay, I was like, what? It's never happened before, right? All right. So look, why is that? Why is it that when you talk to people about this, they get this sort of glazed over look in their eyes? I call it the glazed over zombie look. All right? Where you talk to them about it and they just kind of go like, they're like, oh, yeah.
So outside their model of reality.
Yeah, outside of my right. It's like, oh yeah.
It's like it challenges their identity.
Yeah, yeah. Like, oh, like, nah, dude.
I'm pretty good with girls. I don't need that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't. I got a girlfriend, dog. I'm good, right? Nah, dude. It's okay. It's okay.
It's like the same look that you get if you were trying to explain like quantum physics to like a 6th grader. Like you have no concept.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Yeah. And. Are you ready? Okay. All right. So like, okay. So and isn't it funny, right? Because if you look at all the popular magazines that are out right now, like Maxim magazine, FHM, that kind of stuff, there's features about how to pick up girls all over it. Like, yeah, well, it's like written by like random dudes, right? Like, I mean, maybe some of them are really good, I don't know, but most of it is like they've got some writer, like just an arbitrary writer, like you're on dating, Joe, right? And he's like, okay, right? And he's like, clean your car here, right? And they like put a hot girl picture paste on the article, and then that's it, you know? And I used to like read these things like really intensely, like taking it as authority, like, oh, interesting. This is a really big publication. This guy really knows what he's talking about, right? Okay. You know, now that I've been at a upper end of a business, I see that sometimes the people that you think are appointed so authoritatively are just arbitrary, right? And that's business is not really what you think it is all the time. But look, I guess you could say you would think that something so mainstream, something that so many people are interested in, and something that so many people talk about all the time, like how much time do guys spend talking about chicks, and yet when you actually say, all right, dude, look, why don't we stop talking about it? Why don't we stop this jibber-jabber and go make something happen, right? And it's like, nah, dude, right? And it's very similar, like, if you grew up in a small town, it's almost like, when you talk to a stripper, for example, and she's like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor someday. I'm going to go back to med school, right? Or like you've got your buddies like that think, they're going to become like big millionaires, right? Like almost everyone these days thinks they're going to become a millionaire because they're seeing all these like millionaire mindset programs and stuff like that telling them they're going to be millionaires. They just have to manifest it or whatever it is, right? They neglect the massive, massive amounts of hard work that typically goes into it. But regardless, most people are just not able to, it's kind of like anything that involves elevating your status. Why don't we put it that way, okay? Like on that totem pole back there, anything that's going to have to do with elevating your status or, going beyond the constraints of your identity if the idea that you're talking about with someone goes beyond the constraints of who they think they are and what they think they're capable of, they will block it out. All right? They're going to nix that out of their minds immediately. The subconscious takes over. The unconscious mind takes over and nixes it out immediately. In the same way, look, if I start talking, you guys, maybe a lot of guys in here think they're going to be millionaires, or maybe some guys are. But if I start talking to you about becoming a billionaire, all right, like, we should be billionaires, right? We should make like 100 billion, okay? And you're like, yeah, I'm okay. It's all good, right? That's what most guys are like when you start talking about success with women. And it's interesting because there's a lot that's attached to success with women. We're going to talk about that later, why success with women is actually representative of all these different areas involving status, and why that is so inextricably linked to your self-concept, and why so many people cannot achieve success with women and it's just completely outside their reality, okay? But let's think more about, like, even how your identity could confine you even more. A lot of people will say, and this is the big one, all right? This is the big one when you're teaching guys success with women. They say, that's not me. You ever said that?
Yeah.
If I want to put you in a ballerina outfit, what would you say?
Yeah, that's not me.
That's not you, right? How bad would it be to walk down the street in a ballerina outfit, like a pink tutu?
There's worse things.
Worst things in the world? That's a good attitude. I agree, okay? I do think there's worse things in the world. But you know what? Most people would experience a feeling similar to a severe threat to their well-being walking down the street in a pink tutu, right? Because they think that's not me. Well, in the same way, as a boot camp instructor, one of the constant things that you're not worrying about, but like, not worrying at all, but like moderating or dealing with is that concept of that's not me, all right? People wanting to try new things, try new types of, aspects of their personality, new dynamics of their personality, and they say, that's not me, all right? So your identity can not only help you in the sense that you're like, look, this is who I am, I know who I am, I know what I deserve out of the situation, and there's no question about that. I have personal boundaries, but simultaneously, it can also hold you back because you're like, oh, that's not me, all right? And that's always, that's never a great thing. Now look, when you think about your identity, when you really get into it, it's kind of funny when you really go back, when you think about your personality. Because guess what, guys? A lot of your identity and a lot of your personality is totally, totally arbitrary. So arbitrary, okay? It could have developed one way, it could have developed another way, all right? Like, even take myself. I happened to grow up with a really, really badass schoolyard bully living next to me, okay? Like, this was like the most badass kid in like the whole neighborhood, and he used to beat the crap out of everybody. So this kid would just knock me, man. I mean, this kid would just come, this kid would take branches off the trees and like tie me to the wall and like whip me and stuff like that, right? And I was like 4 years old. Great image, huh? And, and I wasn't able to stand up for myself. I was this tiny little kid. So of course that made me kind of shy, right? Then, my dad was kind of, he was like a strong type personality. And so in a lot of ways that also, caused me, some people that will make them stronger. Personally, the way that I reacted at the time, I became kind of introverted, all right? So that shaped a lot of my personality at a young age. On the other hand, there's a lot of other things that could shape your personality at a young age. Like, think of it this way. What if you have a great life? Like, say you have really, really wealthy parents, all right? A lot of people are envious of people who have wealthy parents, right? Like, oh, he's so lucky he has rich parents. His whole life is taken care of. Nah, man. I have a lot of sympathy for kids that are, I don't want to say sympathy, I don't want to encourage a victim identity in anybody. Nobody's a victim. I don't even care if you are a victim, you're not a victim. But the point is that a rich kid may wind up spoiled, right? He might wind up a spoiled little brat. I remember the richest kid in my school used to be a massive drug addict. He used to steal 30, 40 grand from his parents at a time and go spend it on the other kids who were continually using him. Right? They were just tooling him and using him for his money. And then as soon as he'd run out, he had like no friends left, and he would just like walk around and cry. All right? And then he'd go steal more money. And it was this complete mess. All right? And then he'd get in trouble, and then he'd get kicked out of his house. It was this complete nonsense. And you say, oh, well, look at this kid. He's so lucky he had it all. He blew it. Well, the kid's like, what, 16? Come on. You don't know shit when you're 16. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, that's another thing, too, that we'll talk about is like the fact that growing up, you really don't know shit. And a lot of these like stupid things that you did that you may take on as a part of your identity now, you're just a fucking kid, man. All right? It's just a part of a universal story that everybody goes through. But look, so much of your identity is arbitrary. You may think that you came up with your personality, right? That's me. This is me. This is my personality. I came up with it. That's me. I can't do something that's not me. But guess what? Most of your personality at this point, you probably didn't come up with. All right? Unless you're a bit older and you've been working on yourself. Chances are you did not come up with most of who you are. Quick question?
Sure. So you think the introvert or extrovert is not part of your own identity? Is it not something you are born with?
Well, different like geneticists or biologists have different opinions. They call that the nature-nurture debate. Okay. And that does not appear to be something that's going to be proved concretely, because even when you can find cases where, like, you know, there is evidence that, you know, your DNA affects your personality, there's always countless examples of people that rose above that and made their own choice and stuff like that, or whose environment shaped them differently. So, you know, it depends, right? I mean, I think probably I was born to be an introvert. I don't know if you guys know this, but my biggest fears, my first biggest fear in life has always been public speaking. True. All right. When I was made to do public speaking when I was a kid, I escaped it every chance possible. Always tried to get away from it. My other biggest fear was writing. Okay? I didn't know how to write, and the teacher actually put me in like special courses and stuff to force me to write because I was terrible at it. But yet through like discipline, people might say, "Oh, that guy's like a natural public speaker, like a natural writer or something like that," even though I put time in. So I don't like any constraints. Fuck it. Like, as far as I'm concerned, I go with the old U.S. motto, all men are created equal, as far as I'm concerned, all right? True or not, I don't give a shit. That's where I'm coming from. So look, basically, but that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I guess you could say this. Let's say that you're a kid, right? And you try to be creative. And it happens to work out, right? And then everyone's like, "Oh, good job, man, good job." And then you get validation for that. You get props for that. Well, now all of a sudden, you're like, "Oh, I must be a creative person." And then you start going down those avenues, right? Let's say that you try to step up, okay? Let's say that as a kid, you try to step up and be confident. And it works out, right? Maybe there's just no other confident kids around. You know what I'm saying? Maybe maybe the kids around are just more passive than you are, even though you're just a naturally passive kid. And then all of a sudden, you start to develop those personality traits. Or let's say that you try to step up and you live in an area full of bullies, right? And even though you were confident, and if you were put in some other neighborhood, you would have grown up all emotionally healthy and happy and all that kind of stuff. But now you grow up kind of getting picked on, you try to be confident, you get kicked down, and you develop these negative associations at an early age. And then your personality goes in that direction. Let's say you grew up in the inner city or in the ghetto, right? You guys ever notice how when you, like, say that you travel into like inner city Chicago, for example, and you'll see like a lot of the guys there that I personally saw, I mean, I'm just one guy, but what I thought was like the guys seemed very alpha. Like they seemed very like they knew how to handle themselves, kind of. You know, maybe some of it was bravado and whatever, you know, for younger guys who isn't like that when they're younger. But the point is like, you know, you can see that they handled it. Well, you want to know what my theory is why they're able to handle it? Because they have no choice. They've got no choice, right? When you think about things like depression, self-pity, victim mindset, those are called luxuries, okay? That's called a modern day luxury, okay? Existential angst, that's a beautiful luxury of the modern day, man. All right? You know? The existential debate, right? Like when you've got everything in your life handled, you've got all your food handled, you've got a full belly, that's when you can go, man, what's the meaning of life? It's all meaningless, man. Oh, man, there's just no meaning to this, right? Well, if you're hungry, suddenly that meaning can kick in pretty quickly. All right? So, okay, if your safety's in a dangerous situation. So look, the point is this. So much of your personality is arbitrary and comes from what is called social feedback. All right? It's the social feedback that you get while interacting with other people. So you might be thinking, this is me. I can't change. I can't change my identity. I can't become the person that I want to be. I can't become someone else. Well, guess what? The core of what makes you who you are has never changed. All right? That core essence of who you are, that has never changed, guys. That's always there. But the personality traits that you have, many of those have developed what I call in reaction. All right? So I want you guys to consider that. Think about what that means, all right? You thinking about it?
Okay.
Think about this. Yeah, quick question?
Yeah, so when we say the core never changes of who you really are, that's why you can be so flexible and you can become like a very different person, like you not being a public speaker.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly it. You can be who you want to be. In fact, that's the core message of this program, right? That you can be who you want to be. And let me tell you something. I get a lot of different feedback from people. Some positive, some negative. And that's fine. I'm cool with all of that. But the one compliment that I get that does mean a lot to me, like most compliments, I don't take it too seriously because it's like, that stuff comes and goes, right? I've had times when people love my stuff. I've had times when people hated my stuff. Stuff like popularity, who really cares? But the one compliment that I've always taken to heart is when people say, wow, man, you've changed so much since last year, right? That's the one compliment that I really, really like. That's the one that I'm like, wow, thanks. And every time, basically, I tend to travel I do a lot LA, New York, London, Sydney. I kind of do that little circuit, sort of back and forth. And I'll see some of the same people every year, right? And every year, the same people come up to me and they're kind of like, whoa, you seem different, man. And that's the one compliment that means so much to me because, damn, I really work at this stuff. It's really my passion. So obviously, if people are like, oh, he doesn't seem to have evolved, he doesn't seem to have grown, that would suck, right? Growth is something I really enjoy. I love it. Okay? And I love seeing people be who they want to be. In fact, every time that I teach a boot camp, I say the same thing to every single person that teaches a boot camp, which is I say, look, maybe I'll see you in a year from now, and I'm going to come from a fresh slate. Literally, I'm coming from a fresh slate because the person who you are today could be completely different in a year from now. Not totally different, of course, but so much will have changed. So much will be fresh and new. I've seen guys, who when I first met were self-hating, screwed up, weird, you couldn't even talk to them. You learn, when you're coming in my shoes, you learn not to judge people in any way, and not just pay lip service, oh, I don't judge, you really don't judge. But the thing is that you could have someone who is really hard to connect with, really hard to talk to, and you see him a year later and he's chill, he's relaxed, he's centered, it's all this stuff. And isn't it funny how much all these psychiatric problems get fixed when guys just start getting laid, right? You know what I'm saying? Isn't that it's funny, huh? Some therapist works with a guy for a decade or something like that, right? What's this? I can't put the finger on this guy's problem. The guy's kind of weird and fucking angry and shit, right? Just start getting him laid, and it's boom, right? Right? Problem solved, right? It's gee, you think maybe not getting laid for years at a time was maybe pissing him off? Maybe it wasn't a chemical imbalance. Maybe he's just fucking pissed. All right? Look, I'm by the way, massively oversimplifying here the amazing work that psychiatrists and people do. Massive oversimplification. All right? Yeah. Massive oversimplification. All right? Guilty. But just kind of joking around. But yet at the same time, man, I'll say I see it every single year. Guys that just are totally screwed up and they come back different. And so I never judge, and I never expect to be judged, right? If people want to judge me, they can go ahead, but I'm not going off of their judgment. I always want to be evolving. So essentially, look, I come from the position where there's nothing holding me back in terms of the directions that I want to go. If I want to go back on old views that I don't feel serve me any longer, I'll change them. Look, let me talk to you about who I used to be in Canada growing up. In Canada growing up, I was hardcore right-wing. Okay? Why was I extremely hardcore right-wing? I still am probably more to the right than to the left, but why was I extremely hardcore right-wing? Because my view was look, I've been living on my own since I'm 15. I never asked shit from anybody. I got by on my own. These motherfuckers here can pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They shouldn't be asking for help from anybody, okay? And that wasn't even a point of I'm not giving them my money. It wasn't even like that. It was more for their own good. They need to give up expecting things or thinking that they deserve something or that they're owed anything, all right? Well, you know what? I don't really think like that anymore. I've traveled more of the world. I've seen that a lot of people are not in a position to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Traveling, take inner city Chicago, just as one example that I mentioned. You travel inner city Chicago and you look at this, you're these people cannot even speak English properly. You know what I'm saying? Not all of them, but some of them, right? They're they went to school. They went to school and they studied hard, but the way that they speak English, I remember when I first went to Wendy's and there was a girl there, and I said, hey, could I get a burger? And she said, yo, I want that with cheese. Right? I said, excuse me? She said, yo, I want a hamburger with cheese. I have no idea what you're talking about, miss. I'm sorry. She's like, oh, I want hamburger with cheese. And I'm like, how can this girl get a job? Like, you know what I'm saying, right? How can she get a job? She can't go to an interview. The interviewer can't understand her because of the culture that she lives in, right? So she does need help, and otherwise she'll have no opportunity. I actually had a lot of opportunity. I thought I was so hard done by as a kid just because I didn't have like what the other kids had. I had so much opportunity given to me in comparison to what other people got. It's ridiculous. It's insane how much opportunity that I had. Same thing when I traveled the favelas, like in Rio de Janeiro, right? Like I went into the ghettos in Rio de Janeiro. There's kids walking around with machine guns and stuff like that, all right? And it's crazy. These kids have no way of getting out. So my views changed, all right? I wasn't a hardcore right-wing kid anymore, you know? When I was a kid, I was like, fuck everybody, all right? That was me growing up. First 22 years of my life, fuck everybody, all right? That was my mindset. The world is a negative place. People have to fuck with me, that kind of thing. Because that's the kind of environment that I grew up in. Extremely negative, depressy, no fear of death. Growing up, no fear of death whatsoever. Welcome death. Just like, fuck this shit. Okay? Whatever happens, fuck it. It happens. I don't fucking care. All right? That was the mindset that I was coming from. So people see me now, right? Like people see me, I go back home, and the people who I used to relate to, the people who were my friends, and who still are my friends and will be till the day I die, they're kind of surprised. They're like, who is this guy now? Right? Who is this person? You know? The way that I used to dress totally changed. Right? You know, the style clothes that I wear, the personality that I have, the outlooks that I have, the types of friends that I would have. I have a lot of like hippie type friends now, you know, not like tons, but you know, I've got like kind of, you know, more people who have a totally different mindset than me. That kind of stuff, all right? Why am I talking about this? I want to encourage you guys to do the same. Get the kind of friends that you wouldn't normally have that have different views, that challenge, get friends that actually challenge your reality and don't just feed into your existing reality. Right? Be the kind of person that you want to be. If you want to change your style, do it. If you want to change your personality, do it. Okay? If you see, like, look, say that you see the popular kids and they have like certain ways of joking or dressing and stuff, and you're like, I think that's funny. I think that's cool. Oh, but that could never be me. I could never do it. Bullshit. All right? You could do whatever you want. The core of you is always the same, but you can always evolve in whatever direction you want. You know who I really admire for this, by the way? You guys know Madonna, the singer? Do you guys see how she consistently reinvents herself? She never gets held back to one kind of image or one kind of personality, right? One minute she can be like the controversial like sex girl or whatever, like the big like making sex like more out in the open. Next thing you know, she's like all into this new religion or what Kabbalah or something, right? And she can be like a raver chick, a cowboy. She can do whatever she wants, all right? And that's the kind of versatility that I think the best guys with women have, is they have versatility. They can be gothic. They can be, really well put together, nice suit. They can wear any kind of thing. There's a really great guy with women, like the real masters. Remember, this is an advanced seminar here. Is this stuff necessary to get a girlfriend? Of course not. I'm talking about advanced, what you would call pickup artistry. Okay, you want to talk about the top guys, the best guys. If you want to play at that level, like just for fun, as a hobby, not because you need to play at that level. Nobody needs to play at that level. You don't need to go this far. Just for fun, all right? As a hobbyist, as a person who finds it as a hobby. If you want to go to that level, you can, all right? You can be versatile. You can dress how you want. You can be who you want to be. You can do what you want to do. You can do what you want when you want it, anytime, and nobody can say shit, all right? Nobody. It's your choice. You can do what you want. Now look, the next direction I want to take this in is I want to talk really clearly about what you deserve and what feedback is, and what social feedback is. In your concept of who you are, your identity, you have that concept of what you deserve. All right? You know what you deserve in terms of women. So look, at most seminars, for example, we like to do affirmations. All right? Like if I say, what kind of girl do you deserve? Who here feels that they deserve a 10? And everyone will go, I deserve a 10. And they put, a 10. That's a value judgment, such a value judgment, right? But the point is, whatever their 10 is, they would say, oh, I deserve it. But the truth is, let's think about what you really think that you deserve, all right? I want you guys to go into your minds and think about what it is that you think that you deserve in terms of women. Go into your mind and think, Where do I view myself on the totem pole? And really think about it, because look, let me tell you something. When you know that you're on a girl's level, like when you're like, okay, I'm on her level, right? I'm on this girl's level, it's natural. You're going to behave naturally. And you're easily going to be able to create attraction with that girl. That's a very easy thing. I want you guys to think about maybe the last time that you were talking to a girl who you knew that you were good enough for her. And think about the casual way that you acted and the casual way that you came at it. And maybe, how that caused her to respond to you in a more positive way. Well, you see, what happens with a lot of guys is they have great skills when it's a woman who's moderately attractive to them, right? If the woman is moderately attractive, they can work it, they're fine. But as soon as you put up that girl who's their quote-unquote 10, and by the way, when I say they're 10, I don't mean like 8, fuck what other people think is a 10. You know what I'm saying? You don't date a girl that your guy friends are going to think are attractive. I mean, maybe you can do it, I've done it, so I can't, tell you not to do it. But the point is, this is like a phase that you go through, and then you've got to evolve past that, okay? You want to date who is your 10. Now, when you think, okay, if I'm going to be talking to my 10, are you going to feel totally like you deserve it? Like, on all levels, you know that you deserve that girl, and you're totally at ease. There's no adrenaline going. There's no nervousness going. You're just excited. I mean, if you have adrenaline, it's like the adrenaline of just excitement to be meeting a girl that's really your 10, but it's not like an attachment, all right? When you know that you deserve that girl, attraction is automatic. It is so easy. It's so simple. It's so easy. You're not going to put your foot in your mouth. You're not going to be attached to the outcome. And there's all these little subtle things that you're going to be doing that are creating attraction in that girl when you know that you're on her level and that you're deserving of her. Does that mean that every girl on this planet that you know you're on her level is going to be attracted to you? Of course not. There's girls with wide ranges of personalities. There's no, ultimate way to get every single girl. But at the same time, generally speaking, when you're talking to a girl who's on your level, you're going to be able to create attraction so easily. It is so natural. On the other hand, what happens when you don't feel like you're on a girl's level? How does your behavior change in subtle ways? Any guesses?
Stutter.
Stutter. What else?
Trade status for approval.
Say that again?
You trade your status for approval.
Mm-hmm. Great. And how do you do? What are some ways, behaviors that come up that cause you to do that?
Any kind of supplication where your voice is rising in tone because you're seeking rapport.
Mm-hmm.
All these subcommunications are basically oh, I want you to like me because you are here. Somewhere down here,
Yeah, absolutely. You want to take it even more subtle. If you want to think on an even more subtle level, guys. A lot of the time when we study success with women, we look at the most obvious factors. We look at he chased for her approval, or he qualified himself. But I want to even go more subtle than that. All right? I want to take it from an advanced perspective here. I want to think really, really subtle. Okay? The really, really, really subtle ways that you give away your power. Right? When you're in your head, when you're talking to a girl and you're in your head trying to think of the next thing to say to keep the conversation going further, on some subtle way she can feel that. When as she's talking, you're trying, look, it's okay to do it to an extent, but there's kind of a threshold where it's cool, and then a threshold that's you're giving your power away. And you're trying to relate what you have to say to what she's saying in order to further the conversation or to impress her. On some subtle level, the power is being given away. Now, let me stress here. We're talking about, again, that kind of advanced pickup artistry type angle. Surely all of you have had girlfriends at some point who, you did that with. You tried to further the conversation. You wound up with the girl. So I'm not saying that it can't happen. But I'm talking, if you want to be one of those guys who has the type of rock star lifestyle that that we're talking about, like the real abundance, like just that guy that pulls, man, that guy that fucking pulls hard, always, can always do it. All right, that guy that is just coming from a lifestyle of total abundance. Typically, you've got to be very, very centered in your own sense of identity, your own sense of who you are, and you're not engaging in that subtle type of supplication, that extremely, extremely subtle type of supplication. Because, to me, there's two classifications, right? Like you've got like the dancing monkey type guys, all right? Like the guys who will go up to a girl, like guys who go up to a girl, and it's like, oh, hey, blah, 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 oh, ha, 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 blah, blah, right? And they can keep the interaction going for a little bit and get the laughter, but there's no pull, all right? There's no close. And then you've got the guys who really pull, all right? The guys who are living in sexual abundance. And those are the guys who, from the core difference, know who they are, all right? So when I think about what is the core difference between a guy who's like more on the dancing monkey end of the continuum versus a guy who's more towards the, you know, the sex-worthy guy, as Tim would call it, end of the continuum, your core sense of who you are is probably the defining factor of that, all right? The main defining factor between the dancing monkey and the guy that pulls, the sex-worthy guy, is going to be whether or not he knows who he is. So don't forget that, all right? You've got to begin to know more about who you are. We'll talk about that, so we'll get into that. So social feedback. This brings us back to some of the concepts that we talked about yesterday. What is social feedback? What is this secondary source from which you get your reality? So we talked about this yesterday. And if you remember, we said first-hand experience versus second-hand experience. So your mind is always pinging, right? Always pinging to find out who you are. Find out what is permissible behavior in the environment. Find out what is normal. You do not figure out how the world works on your own, guys. You're not figuring out how the world works. What are some behaviors that you know not to do? We talked yesterday, jumping out of a window, right? How do you know not to take dirt off the ground and start eating it? How do you know not to put your finger in an electrical socket? Just out of curiosity, who here has ever put their finger in an electrical socket? Yeah, how do you like it?
Oh, it hurts. It gets a tingly feeling.
Tingly feeling? That nice tingly feeling? Or more of like a extremely alarming tingling feeling? Or no, you like it?
I don't want to eat it.
Yeah? Okay, cool. All right. Okay. I've done it once. The point is, look, you learn all these things. Why? Secondhand feedback. And look, what we're always doing on a subtle level, try to follow this, guys, on a very, very subtle level, is we're looking at how other people are reacting to our behavior. So for example, say that you're a kid, say you're 2 years old, right? And you pick up a little thing of dirt and you're about to eat it, and then you see the little subtle expressions on other people's faces that are kind of like that, like that. These little subtle expressions, you're picking this stuff up. At least if you have any social acuity, right? Some kids and people are born without the ability to read social cues, and that's kind of like an issue that they have to, work on, and that's like a challenge that they have. But assuming that you have the ability to read social cues on some level, you're able to see what is normal, permissible behavior and what is bad behavior. And so you see how when your identity was forming, if you try to step up and you're seeing other people say, that's not permissible behavior, that's not the right way to act, then your mind goes, no, don't do that. Don't act cool. Don't act popular. Don't be fun. Whatever it is. That is what social feedback is. Now look, one thing that you got to remember is a great deal of your reality is 1, unverified, and 2 is secondhand. All right? You have not learned everything about the world on your own. You don't have time. You don't have the time and energy to go find out everything that there is to know about the world on your own. This is why we rely on secondhand information. That's a principle that you have to understand. First-hand information, second-hand information. You don't have the time to find out every little stupid thing about this planet on your own. You have to learn how to trust secondary information. So how does that affect you? How does that affect your identity? Well, look, your mind has like a radar system, right? We talked about this yesterday. Your mind has this little radar system that looks at how certain people are of themselves. Basically, it's saying, is this person's sense of reality more accurate than mine. Think about this, guys. Whenever you look at somebody, say that you're driving, right? And you say, is it right or left? And the guy goes, it's right. And he seems totally sure of himself. Your brain goes, oh, this must be true. Let's go to the right, just because he seems sure of himself. Do any of you guys have any friends that always seem sure of themselves? Sometimes they're wrong and it like freaks you out. Yeah, right? And it's like, oh, and then you gotta and then eventually you've gotta come to the conclusion, even when that guy seems sure of himself, you still gotta think. You can't totally trust it, right? Because he's just a very certain guy. You know, you can't always listen to it. Reticular activation system is more when you tune into what has value to you, and definitely someone who has a lot of certainty of themselves would probably seem to have value. Radar system would be more like, RAS is like this. There's the whole picture, and it tunes into what has value to you. This would be more like, you've got a guy, and he's talking, and if it seems certain, then you'll believe it. And if he seems uncertain, then you go, nope, I'm not listening to that. All right, that's the best way I can put it to you. So, Ben, thank you for following with me. So look, when somebody else believes, like say one of the more popular kids, have you guys ever had one of the more popular kids in school sort of like try to put you down, and he was so certain of it that it exerted a psychological pressure on you to think that you were that nerd that he was pushing you as? You guys get that? Who here's had an experience like that where a kid did that? Okay, great. All right, good stuff. We've all had that. I remember a kid said to me when I was in like the 2nd or 3rd grade, he said, you know, I'm better than you at everything. And I said, that's not true. I have some stuff. He goes, no, you have nothing good about you. I'm better at everything. And I said, that's not true. And he said, okay, name something. And I was like, oh, English. He's like, no, I did this and this and this. I was like, oh, right? I'm like, math. He's like, no, I got this and this and this. I was like, oh. I was like, hockey. He's like, no, I got this and this. I'm like, oh. He's like, see? Nothing, right? And I was like, right? And I was like, all right? You know? But is it, like, look, how ridiculous is this, okay? This little kid, like in grade 2, for whatever reason, for whatever fluke, got the quality of being very sure of himself. Like he had that quality. For whatever reason, I don't know what it is. Who knows? Maybe some scientist can answer me this question, but for whatever reason, some kids on the playground are very sure of themselves. For whatever reason. Maybe their dad, you know, maybe they've got like a big family, right? They've got like 10 brothers at school, so they know they've got the backup. Whatever it is, you know, maybe they got popular early. Maybe they made the right contacts early in kindergarten playing G.I. Joe. But for whatever it is, they have that certainty of themselves. And what happens is when someone has a lot of certainty of themselves about who you are, there is a psychological pressure that is put on you to become that person. In fact, let me tell you a boot camp secret, all right? Because if I was going to do a seminar on how to teach boot camps, it would last a month. All right, let me tell you. One of the main reasons why, you know, you can produce a transformation in somebody is whenever I teach a boot camp, I always believe to the fullest extent, this guy is a pimp. I believe it with 100% certainty. I treat you like a pimp, I talk to you like a pimp, and what immediately happens, you see the change in the demeanor immediately because the reality is being pushed on it, right? And because I do it every weekend, I've gotten good at imposing that reality, and that's why you see such a rapid change of behavior. Then, of course, the rest of the weekend is spent trying to staple this in and make it stick. So look, think of how this is affecting you and where people in your life made you feel like you weren't good enough. And just because they had more certainty than you, the people that did this to you could be total dumbasses, right? They could just have a level of certainty. A lot of stupid people in this world have a high level of certainty. Isn't that the truth?
Yes.
Right? A lot of dumb people have a really high level of certainty. Right? Positions of authority, sure. And so the thing is, yeah, I like that. Isn't this such a problem with politics, right? I'm a huge believer in democracy, but if you want to look at it objectively, one of the issues with democracy is you get a political leader who's like really, really sure of himself, but one of the reasons that he's sure of himself is because he ignores reality all the time. Okay? And then people will vote for him because they go, that's the guy, that's the one right there. He's the most sure of himself. Isn't that funny how that works? That's why people need to be educated to make the system work. Now, regardless, okay, you do not have to succumb to that kind of social pressure, but there's definitely a pressure that is there, and we need to recognize it, all right? There is other people's concept of who you should be, and there's a pressure that's put on you to become that person.
So it's living up to that and living down to it, basically.
Yes, absolutely. What I try to do whenever I teach people is that same pressure that like a schoolyard bully would have put to push them down, I'm putting that same pressure but to be up. And in the same way that a schoolyard bully would say, if you try to act cool, would be like, fuck you, man, fuck you, right? For me, it's like if I see a guy trying to act chode, I'm like, what is this? What is this fucking chode shit? What the fuck is this chode shit, right? Come on, let's go, right? And so so it creates like a negative social pressure against chody behavior, right? That's how we teach a program, okay? Now, here's the next concept. This is big, all right? So pay attention. Okay? Imprints. I love this. God, I love this. Imprints. All right. Everybody in their mind has a concept of what a cool person looks like and what a not so cool person looks like. You guys have heard me mention that. All right? I want you guys to think of this as imprints. In your mind, you have that concept. It's based on one level, it might be an instinct that we're born with. Like it's an instinct just to know what high status behaviors are. Like in a gorilla, the gorilla puts his hands up above his head, and then other people say, okay, that's intimidation, right? That's like an innate one. Then we have social conditioning, the learned behaviors. In different cultures, there's different behaviors that could signify high status, right? Some cultures, they do a loose handshake. Some cultures, they do a firm handshake. But generally speaking, within your own culture, you have a very, very clear-cut idea of you have an imprint in your mind. Both, for some of you, it might be conscious. For some people, it might be unconscious of what a cool guy looks like and what a not cool guy looks like. Those of us who study social dynamics, we probably have a very, very good idea of what a cool person looks like. Why? Because we've read our little textbook, haven't we? Eye contact, check. Loose body language, check. Resonating voice, check. Very funny, check. Sure of himself, check, right? So we've read these books. And we have a clear-cut idea of what that is. Then, we can articulate that. But even people who haven't, okay? Say someone who's never studied social dynamics in their entire life, they may not have a conscious imprint of what a cool person looks like, but they definitely have an unconscious version. You may not be able to explain it, but you do respond to it. That's why when a really cool guy comes around, he has a lot of status, he may be able to impose a status on you. So think of it like a rough sketch. A rough sketch of what a guy who has value looks like, and a rough sketch of what a guy who does not have value looks like. All right? Now look. These imprints, you have an idea in your mind of how you're supposed to act. How am I supposed to act? What am I supposed to do? How is my behavior supposed to look? What your mind does is your mind is always pinging and looking at your situation. All right? It is always pinging. So think of it like this. If this is you, your mind is doing this all the time. Always. Unconscious. All the fucking time. You guys ever heard of the concept of culture shock? Who here has ever experienced culture shock? Having it right now. Having it right now? Great. All right. So look. What culture shock is where you go into another environment and you feel this very distorted feeling, like a surreal feeling, all right? I mean, I guess different people would have different descriptions. That's how I would describe it. It's like a surreal feeling of where you're there and you're like, what the fuck is this, right? Okay? I remember when I first went to Brazil, the culture shock, insane. Get out the airport, I'm driving down, and there's miles and miles of favelas, right? Miles and miles and miles. And I get there and I'm like, oh, what's going on here? And I haven't slept in 2 days because it's an insane flight to get there. I go to sleep. I pass out after because I can't sleep on airplanes very well. I pass out after almost 2 days of not sleeping because of all these flight delays and whatnot. About 3 hours in, a Brazilian guy comes into my room and says, this is my room, get out, okay? And he's like one of these really fit Brazilian guys who looks like he does capoeira or something like that. Right? So I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? I gotta go home, man. What the fuck is this? So I was like, he's like, this is my room. And I thought that it was my buddy Nathan's room that I was in. Okay, and that Nathan just wasn't there. I got the key. I'm like, and you know, the end of the story, very briefly, was I said, how can I figure out if this guy's lying or not? I go rip open his bathroom supplies to see what language they're written in, and they're all written in Portuguese, and I realized it really was the guy's room. Okay, this poor guy, they put me in his room, all right, and I was passed out. He found some stupid-ass white man passed out in his room, right? Okay, but basically, there's a culture shock that goes on there. You're walking down the street in Lapa, it's like, you know, what is this? There's just different mannerisms going on. I would imagine going to, you know, there's even more, much more culture shock places in the world, much, much more than that. So, why is that happening? Because your radar system is doing that, and it's going, it's like, you know, it's like you're flying in an airplane. It's like, where'd the ocean go? Where did all those things that we rely on, that we're pinging off of, go? Where did they go? Regardless, social imprints. We have these concepts of how we're supposed to act, and what your mind does as a radar system is it pings out, and it says, look, when you're here on the totem pole, you have one personality, right? Like, when you go to, it says this. When you're here, we use imprint number 1. Let's call it imprint number 1. All right? When we're here, imprint number 2. When we're here, imprint number 3. Do any of you guys ever feel so frustrated that you can be the coolest guy in one situation, but then sometimes when it really counts, you cannot be that same guy?
Yes.
Would you say that that is one of your biggest vexations in all social dynamics?
Yes.
Yeah? Because for me, this was huge. It drove me nuts. Around some people, I could be charismatic, I could be charming, I could be relaxed, comfortable in my own skin. But around other people, my radar system was getting thrown out of whack. And let me tell you, when you're first studying social dynamics and you're first getting into this stuff, you're trying to become a better person. And so when you start meeting people that don't buy into it quite right away, it can really mess with you. It can really bring out the worst in you. Really bring out a lot of turn-off, very unattractive behaviors in you. And certainly did for me many times. Probably still does sometimes. So look.
So your identity determines the level, like imprints that you're getting 1, 2, or 3, is that it?
Mm-hmm. Well, think of it this way. You have these imprints are like different identities that you have, right? Well, look, one identity is like, think of it like this. One identity is like, hey, how you guys doing? You know, joking around, right? Having fun. You can look at somebody right in the eye. You're like, hey, how you doing, man?
Doing
Hey,
great.
very good to meet you, right? Then another imprint would be like, it's like, oh, there's that guy. It's like, oh, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Hey, right? You know, like that. Or maybe like, you know, the other direction goes. Sometimes people go submissive. Some people try to be more alpha. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like they go the other direction, the compensation, right? So it's like, hey, what's up,
Hey,
dude?
I'm doing right,
Hey,
great,
bro. Yeah, right? And it's just kind of like, and you can feel that they're reacting. And it's never pleasant to be speaking with someone when they're reacting to you because they're like, oh, they're not comfortable with themselves, right? You don't judge it, but it's not as fun as just being, you know, around people that are just totally comfortable. It's not as much of a value situation for yourself. So,
Would you say it's appropriate in certain situations?
of course, yeah. I mean, look, truth be told, if you would have asked me a couple years ago, I'd say, no, you always have to be you, man. You always have to be you. Why? Because I don't work in the military, right? Like, I live in Hawaii and I have friends like in Iraq and the military and stuff like that. And like, they're like, nah, dude, if I do that shit, I'm screwed, right? I'm done, okay? And I've heard that a lot of people resent their corporate jobs because they're always having to beta themselves, right, within that environment. I have no idea if that's true or not, or if that's just in their own heads.
You can't go, hey, yo, what's up?
Uh-huh. Yeah? But isn't there a way that you can do that and still not be giving your power away? Because I deal with superiors all the time, and I don't feel like I'm giving my power away.
Definitely, but I feel
Yeah.
like your speech pattern might be
Yeah.
a little bit more reserved versus a lot more.
Yeah, I feel like when I'm dealing with a superior, I'm just like, hey, how are you? It's just like very chill. It's like, hey, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, very good.
But if,
You
yeah,
know?
so like that.
Just
but
chill.
If you're not solid in your identity, then everything's going to threaten that.
Okay. So you think that maybe the guys that say that the whole corporate thing's stifling them are just not solid in their identity yet?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't want to speak because I don't have experience with that, but
Even past that though, you know, like you'll have a boss that'll come in and tell some lame joke and like everybody laughs and you're like, you and be like, you'll be like, why is he laughing? And you create conflict because if you're not going with like his expectation, he's like, why the fuck isn't he laughing?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Everybody
the
else is laughing, so it does create conflict.
Really?
Even when you have your identity firmly rooted.
You respect the position, but you respect yourself as well.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. That's a great nail it. Right? Yeah. Yeah, that's great, man. Respect the position, but respect yourself. You know, for me too, maybe as a side note, but I don't, just maybe me throwing my 2 cents in the pot there would be like, I always try to like laugh at people's joke and make them feel good. You know what I'm saying? Like I always try to make people feel like comfortable. And there's 2 types, I think. On one level, you have people who you're trying to make feel comfortable who are very beta, right? Like they're beta, so you try to make them feel good about themselves. On another level, you have these kind of like arrogant, obnoxious guys, and the natural fear is if I like laugh at his jokes and stuff like that, then it's just going to feed into that ego and make him even more tyrannical or annoying. But I don't believe in that, actually. Okay, let me tell you why. I really believe, not always, but I believe that 90% of the time, when you speak with someone from your higher self, okay, when you speak with someone very genuinely and authentically, and you're very rooted in that, I believe that you can bring that out of people. I absolutely believe that. And I found that when you hear that someone has a bad reputation, like, oh, this guy's like, he thinks he's all that and blah, 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 if you can just chill with that guy, like, and don't judge him, right? If you don't judge him at all, and maybe he says a couple obnoxious things, and you just kind of go, oh, huh, like you let him have the frame a little bit, but then you're just very authentic with him. A lot of time, you just see him just kind of, it's like, he almost like lets go of the tension, like, right? Like he can be himself around you, or she can be herself around you, because she can kind of let down that guard. So I think, yeah, on one level, you don't want to, like, you know, there is that level not wanting to feed into, but I do think a lot of the time you can help people to just like let go of that tension around you and be one of those types of people. But of course, if you're going to be one of those types of people, you've got to be that person yourself first, right? You've got to go, that's like a hypnosis principle. They say the first principle in hypnosis is go first, right? Like you've got like to like put someone in a trance, you've got to be in like a trance like state yourself. I'm not a hypnotist, so I can't speak, but I thought that was a cool concept. Anyway, so look, moving forward with these imprints, here's the quote that I would give for you. Your situation is always changing, and as it does, your mind is always looking at social feedback to determine how much value you have, figuring out what type of personality is most appropriate at the time. All right? What roles are most appropriate? So I'm going to repeat that because it's a mouthful, and I want you guys to understand it. Your situation is always changing. Okay? Your situation is always changing. And as it does, your mind is always looking at social feedback to figure out how much value you have and determine which personality is appropriate at the time. So basically, your mind is going, how much value do I have? How much value do I have? This much? Okay. We're going with this one. Okay, how much value do I have? How much value do I have? Oh, I have a lot of value? Okay, I'll let him do this one. Now, this is a key concept. This is huge. Because your mind is actually letting you have a certain type of personality. Like, it's letting you, right? Sometimes it won't let you. Have you ever approached a girl, and you know that you're charming enough, you know that you're charismatic enough to attract her, but for some reason, your mind won't give you the words. It's like, where's the words?
Yeah. From an evolutionary perspective, why wouldn't your mind automatically compensate?
I love that you asked that question because you're one step ahead of me. All right. We're going to talk about it. Good. And so essentially, look. Here, we'll keep moving, okay? Okay, quick question. Massive quick.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is why women like multiple personalities with guys with different identities that they're accessing, you know, for a cool guy versus non-cool guy.
Yep. What about it?
That was it.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, good. So look, why do we only get access? All right? Why do we only get access to certain parts of our personality? Okay? Why is that? Why is it that sometimes the words are all there, flooding out? Because guys, you guys have had that, right? A night where the words just flood out? Yeah? Survival?
By the environment in that moment.
Yep. Exactly. I'm going to get into it. Yeah, it's rhetorical. Why do we do that? Exactly. Entitlement. Okay? Now look. Got you thinking. That's good. So look. Sometimes it's very easy to be confident. Sometimes it's hard. So we pose the question. So why would your mind only give you access to the part of your personality that it thinks other people will like? It definitely seems pretty counterproductive. Well, unlike now, the last couple thousand years that we've lived in a civilized society, in a society where if you piss someone off, I know it's unfortunate, they're not allowed to pick up a big rock and bash your head in. So annoying, huh? All these fucking dudes, you just want to bash their heads in with rocks and shit. You like have to like not do that. Anyway, so we now live in a society where life has value and people will not hurt each other. You can step up a lot, right? And nothing's going to happen.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
Like, you can go into a club. You could be the biggest dick in the world if you want. You know? And nothing's going to happen.
You say nothing's going to happen. You mean nothing.
I don't know, dude. I mean, look, I've been out for years. I've never seen a guy get beat up yet. All right? I've seen nothing. And some of the shit that I've made guys do before and that I've done is so stupid that you would think that someone would just come and just end it all. All right?
Clubs all the time.
I don't know, man. I never seen it. Like, you know, I just don't deal with it. Like, look, guys will. Here's the other thing. When you're in state, nothing fucking happens. All right? But look, maybe we have some counterexamples here, so maybe you will get beat up. But certainly, I would say this. Okay? All right? Maybe you're gonna get your ass kicked, man. All right? And if you do, fuck it, so what? But you're still not going to get killed, all right? Has anyone ever seen someone get killed in a club? Am I going to lose on that one?
Yeah, I haven't seen someone get killed, but one of my friends actually, it's a really good friend of mine.
Yeah.
He almost got killed at a frat.
What did he do?
He was basically just like negging the girls at the party and like acting like a dick. And it was a social, it was a social circle. He wasn't really like invited there, but like he knew one of the guys. The guy was like, whatever. So he shows up, frat guy. Like this is basically what happened. He goes outside. They're like, dude, talk to your buddy, whatever. Goes outside to talk to his buddy. Dude jacked him, and like he woke up in a hospital the next day with a fucking like they had given him almost severe brain damage.
Really? Okay. So we're gonna edit this. Okay. Okay. So Tyler is right. Okay. Okay. Look. Okay.
Situational.
So let's have core confidence, man. All right. Look. Yeah. There's bounce. Look, you get in a fight in a club, and here's what you hear. You hear, right? Then you go, like that, okay? It's happened to me before, all right? It's happened to me. I get too excited. I'm like, fuck you, right? Then I hear, I get dragged out of the club, okay? Happened to me like a year ago, or no, like a couple months ago, all right? Okay? So look, kind of fun though, but anyway, look. For the most part, the threat level of violence, aside from these odd incidents, the threat level of violence is dramatically reduced, all right? And if you're chode at home, please do not be terrified by these incidents of which you've heard, okay? So, all right? Because for the most part, it's all good, okay? And, here, just keep going, but the point is, look, there's not a lot of threat level these days. For the most part, you can just be the biggest idiot. And I'm not encouraging you to be an idiot, but what I would say is that don't be afraid of being an idiot. Like, because I guess whenever you're trying on a new behavior, of course it's going to look stupid sometimes. Of course, right? Any newbie is going to look like a dumbass. That's called a reality. Like anytime that you're a newbie, you're trying on all these new behaviors. They're not calibrated yet. You know that feeling when you see someone who knows he's not cool and he's trying to act cool? How cheesy that looks? That's going to be you, right? You are going to be that guy. You're going to be the dumbass looking guy when you're trying on a new behavior because it's not new yet. All right? You have not learned how to do it yet, so it's not calibrated. Well, okay, so are you afraid of that? If you're afraid of that, then the range of your personality will never expand. All right? Your personal range is not going to expand. So you've got to get over that, all right? Look, let me tell you something. A very, very big part of mastery in terms of success with women is ability to endure humiliation repeatedly. And isn't that funny, by the way? Most guys here would be completely willing to get in a fight with somebody and get really hurt if someone steps over their boundaries. Why? Because that's a manly thing to do, right? It's like you will go to the utmost extreme to live up to your identity, won't you? But when it comes to humiliating yourself, we don't want to do that, right? That's almost worse than getting beat up because humiliation is not a part of your identity. You know, where being manly is part of your identity, looking like a dumbass chode is not a part of your identity.